Okay. Hello, everyone. Sorry, I had to set up some things. I'm kind of a one-woman show over here tonight. But I am oh gosh, everything's falling. It's a little bit chaotic over here. Let me see. I am going to shoot Dr. Yen a message that we are live. Okay. All right. So, I think it's still just me in here. So, let me get everything all set up. Welcome to TMI Tuesday. It's the best Tuesday of the month. We will be doing a refresher course tonight on, Dr. Ann's here. Let me try to get her in. But we will be doing a refresher course tonight on Plan B. This is always the hardest part. Okay, Dr. Yen. Hello. How are you?
Hey, good.
Awesome. So I was just saying to everyone in here that tonight we will be talking about Plan C versus Plan B. What does that mean? What are the differences and all that good stuff? So I did want to just jump right into it because I started us a little late tonight. But we've been hearing a lot about Plan C recently, but we've been hearing more about its drug name, Mifid. How do we pronounce it, first of all?
People call it Miffy for short. So mifepristone and misoprostol, and yeah.
Perfect. So we've been hearing a lot about Miffy recently, and I just wanted to get the doctor's input on what it is, how it functions, and why we've been hearing so much.
Yeah, so I think you and I use the jargon Plan C a lot, but not the rest of the world may know what that means. So when we say Plan C, we mean medication abortion. So Plan A is your first birth control. It can be the IUD, the implant, the shot, the pill, the patch, the ring, condom, whatever. And then failing that, then you go to Plan B, and it's generics, which is emergency contraception, though we prefer that you consider Ella, and we'll go over that later. And then Plan C is if, holy crap, you're pregnant, then you can get medication abortion or surgical abortion. And Plan C pills.org is actually a nonprofit. You go there, it has all the information. You type in your state if you're in the United States, and it'll tell you what's legal, what's not legal, what's available, how much it costs, how long it takes. You can sort it by distance. You can sort it by cheapest. I sort it by cheapest. And so that's plancpills.org. There's also Mayday.health, which is another nonprofit that has medication abortion information. So for medication abortion, it's actually 2 pills. It's not two different drugs. It's actually, I think, like a total of 6 pills, like 2 pills now, 4 pills later, or something like that. But mifepristone is also used to treat, like, I believe, endometrial cancer and other cancers, but in this case, it's used for medication abortion, and it's an anti-progesterone. So progesterone is the hormone of pregnancy, and this is blocking that hormone, so then a pregnancy cannot continue to grow, cannot continue to survive. Misoprostol can be used for medication abortion alone. It just hasn't been shown to be as good. In some cases, it works 60, 70. Some cases, it's worked 92% of the time. It just depends what dose, what population, etc. And we've come up with a protocol that works 97% of the time if you use it within the first 10 to 12 weeks for medication abortion. And it's ridiculous that a activist judge is trying to take away a drug that's been approved by the FDA, which is like the holy grail of, approvals. To get that approved, the US is the stamp, and it'll lose all credibility if a judge can just be like, no, I'm going to turn back 23 years, 22 years worth of history. So misoprostol, the way it works is it's a prostaglandin, and it causes cramps in the uterus to cramp out whatever's in there, but it also softens the cervix so stuff can fall out. And so that's how you can use that alone, but it's better with mifepristone, which is an anti-progesterone. And know that mifepristone, 1, has been around for 23 plus years, 2, was deemed by the FDA safe. They ran it through a whole bunch of tests and stuff, and they've had it around for 23 years. Millions of people probably have used it by now. And then that it's safer than Viagra for sure, safer than penicillin, safer than Tylenol. And anyone who tells you otherwise is probably not a doctor, not a scientist, or at least not a trustworthy one.
Wow. So that really has no medical basis. It's mostly just an attempt, once again, to restrict further abortion access. So that's horrifying. But I think a lot of the time when we're talking about medication abortion, at least on our side of things, we're always hearing people use Plan B and abortion interchangeably, which couldn't be further from the truth. But let's just lay that out a little again and a little more clearly for everyone who's confused.
Yes. So Plan B and its generics is emergency contraception. It's, oh my gosh, the condom popped, or God forbid, you were sexually assaulted, or you forgot to take your birth control pills 3 days in a row and you had heterosexual sex, or you left your vaginal ring out for 3 days, or you left your patch out for 3 days, or you went late for your depot shot and you had sex, and you want to prevent pregnancy. If you are pregnant and you take Plan B and its generics, nothing will happen. That's why it's not an abortion. An abortion is, I'm pregnant and I want to terminate this pregnancy. But if you take Plan B and you're pregnant, nothing will happen. Nothing will happen. You will continue to be pregnant. So that's why Plan B is not an abortion. Plan B and its generics is not an abortion. If you take it and you're pregnant, nothing happens. And then Ella is the other emergency contraceptive. And if you take that and you're pregnant, nothing happens either. So don't waste your money. If you have a positive pregnancy test, don't be taking Plan B. Don't be taking Ella, not because it's going to do anything bad, but don't waste your money.
Yeah. And especially if you're likely not going to get a positive pregnancy test 2 to 5 days after unprotected sex. So,
usually at least 10 days after when your period should have happened.
Yeah. So emergency contraception, I always like to think about it as like your last attempt at birth control before the sperm and the egg hook up.
Yes.
So
that's why it's called contraception.
Yeah.
Against the egg and sperm hooking up.
Perfect. And you did touch upon Ella. We here always talk about how not all emergency contraception is created equal. Let's dive into the different types and their pros and cons.
Yes. So what your doctor doesn't know could end you up pregnant. And I give talks to doctors all the time, and some of them aren't aware of all of your options for emergency contraception. So to be absolutely thorough, emergency contraception, you could use an IUD, can be the implant, or sorry, I always love to just throw the implant in. No, the IUD, either the copper IUD or the hormonal IUD. Generally not a fan of the copper IUD because the 2 side effects, more blood, more cramps. But in the case of emergency contraception, copper IUD works amazing. There have been research where they put the copper IUD versus the hormonal IUD for emergency contraception, and the copper IUD had 0 pregnancies out of 300 11 patients or so. And then the hormonal IUD had one pregnancy out of 311 or so. So it was showing that the hormonal IUD is as good, almost as good as the copper IUD. And so if you're a person who's had a bunch of oopsies, throw a hormonal IUD out there as your emergency contraception to prevent pregnancy, and then leave it in there for the next 5 to 7 years to prevent further further pregnancies if that's of interest to you. So number one is IUD. Number two is Ella. So Ella is a prescription only emergency contraception. We don't get paid by them. I just want to prevent unplanned pregnancy. It works better than Plan B and its generics at every single time point. And the example is there's like 2% pregnancies in some situations on Plan B and its generics, and there's 1% on Ella. And I know it's only 1% different, but if you're that 1%, it's 100% pregnant, right? So if it were me, my daughter, my friend, anybody that's listening to this lecture, anybody that's in the Pandia Health family, we want you to prevent unplanned pregnancy if that is your interest. And thanks to the Affordable Care Act, if you have insurance, no copay, no deductible, aka free. For both of the emergency contraceptives. So the next one is Plan B and its generics. The key there to know is that anyone of any age, of any gender in the US of A should be, by law, walk into any pharmacy and just get it over the counter. The negative of it is that there is a BMI limitation. If your body mass index is 26 or greater, doesn't work so well. If your BMI is 30 or greater, like muscle builder, athlete, or like me, likes to eat a lot of dessert, then it doesn't work at all. So please, 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 Pandia PSA, share with everybody you know. If you're doing Plan B and its generics, check your BMI. I don't want you wasting, $46, $15, $60 on Plan B and its generics if it's useless to you. I don't want you taking it thinking it's going to prevent pregnancy when it's not going to work. So BMI 26 or greater, so good. Under 26, probably fine. 30 or above, no, don't waste it. Just do it with Ella. Ella works until a BMI 35. Once your BMI is 35 or greater, your only option is the IUD. And any method of emergency contraception can be used up to 5 days after. But as I like to say, because you're listening to me talk, if the condom pops at 3 a.m., I want the medicine in the person with the uterus's mouth at 3:10. I do not want any cuddling, waiting till the morning. Waiting till 5 days after, because I did say you could do 5 days after. Because as soon as the egg pops out, too late, not going to work. And so it depends where you are in your cycle, how well the emergency contraception works. The only exception to that is the copper IUD. And the way I like to think of the copper IUD is just lasers. Pew, 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 pew. Just like destroying everything in its path. And that's how it prevents unplanned pregnancy. And then lastly, there's the USP method. You take 4 birth control pills now, 4 in 12 hours. That's the least effective method, and because it has a ton of estrogen, there's barfing involved, not on purpose, but sometimes it's a side effect. If you do barf it, you want to retake it within a half an hour, if that's when you barfed it. If it's been longer than an hour, it probably got where it needed to go. And then just FYI, you could actually stick it up your vagina. So even though you have nausea, you won't barf it up because it's in your vagina. So your vagina can suck up birth control pills.
Wow. Okay. I swear, every time I talk with you, I learn something new. I've been with this company for how long, and I'm still learning new things. That I did not know that last one.
Oh yeah.
That's awesome. And I don't know, you definitely did mention, but I'm going to circle back. We do offer prescriptions to Ella. So if you are ever in need of some Ella, we don't recommend waiting to the last minute. It's probably something good to just have in your bedside table for emergencies, but we do offer it. So
get it before you need it. Get it so it's a fire extinguisher waiting in case of emergency. Don't be like, I need to find a doctor. Somebody needs to call this in. Is it covered by my insurance? Does the pharmacy have it? You're like, ah! And meanwhile, you're getting pregnant.
To make matters worse, you're now getting pregnant. So beyond the MIFI debate, there has also been a lot of talk, particularly from the lovely state of Florida, about changing some sex education in school. There's been some legislation actually put forward, and they wanted to even limit period education. So, as a period educator, what are the repercussions of something like this?
We want people with uteri to learn about periods before they get their periods. And the average age is 12. So one could say that's fifth grade. And the law that's being propagated by a person without a uterus who doesn't understand what it's like to bleed 1 week out of 4 randomly from age 12 to 50 and to get bleeding as a fifth grader has proposed the law that you can't teach sex ed until sixth grade, and that teachers and nurses cannot discuss those topics. And so one, it's shaming of a natural body function. And two, when a fifth grader, which is the average age of getting your period in the US of A, gets their period, they're going to think things. And so there was a case, there was not a priest, but like a deacon. And he became a huge proponent for sex ed because he had to preside over the funeral of a 13-year-old girl who killed herself. Because if you can have immaculate conception, she thought her period was a sign that she had sexually transmitted infection, even though she'd never had sexual relations because she wasn't taught anything.
Yeah.
So people with uteri need to be taught that if blood comes out of your vagina, that this is a natural process. It shows that you're fertile. I always wear my uterus necklace here. You all can get a close shot of that to remind us that we all came from the uterus. Respect the uterus. And without the uterus, there would be no life. So if you are truly pro-life, respect the uterus, but also don't be afraid to teach about this natural function that happens in young people's bodies. And so some people would get it at age 8. So in general, I've seen the, period talk in 4th grade, but technically you might even want it in 3rd grade just so people are prepared. But 4th grade seems more natural. And it would be wrong that if somebody got it as an 8-year-old, they couldn't tell the teacher, they couldn't tell the nurse, that this would be shameful. It's like, if you got a bloody nose, we need to talk about it. We need to prevent it. We need to treat it, not, no. And again, without that bleeding process, none of us would exist. So very not cool. Dude needs to stay out of sex ed. Leave it to the sex ed educators, leave it to the doctors, the scientists. Parents want sex ed taught in schools. Every time they do surveys, 80% of parents want it taught because they don't want to teach it and they want it taught right. And in California, we require medically accurate sexuality education. But we are not as cool as Canada, because I would have to give props. I love Canada. They start teaching sex ed in kindergarten and every other year as appropriate. So,
and
as much as you need to know.
Yeah, and I think there is a bit of misinformation with what that means when they're teaching sex ed in kindergarten. They're not teaching children about sex. They're teaching young children about body parts and consent in terms of having to hug all your family members. If you don't want to hug your family members, it's okay to say no. And if somebody says no to hugging, it's innocent. But that kind of stuff it makes all the difference. And we've seen that places that lack this sex education actually have higher rates of unplanned pregnancy. Is that correct?
It's not don't ask, don't tell, it doesn't happen. As I like to say, if you make abortion illegal, it will still happen. If you don't talk about sex, it will still happen. There are hormones. Kids can see lots of, I realize now with no longer TV, but like Netflix, Hulu, blah, 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 there's a lot more sex out there that we're seeing than we saw before.
Yeah. Netflix is going the whole HBO route with some of their TV shows. So yeah, I mean, the best way to handle these tough topics with your kids is to talk about them and educate. And we've seen time and time again that proper education leads to, handling these sensitive subjects with care. And I got my period when I was in 5th grade, and luckily I have awesome parents that educated me on that beforehand. But I think I got my period like a month before they actually taught about the birds and the bees and all that. So I luckily was armed with the information, but I can't imagine how horrifying that would be if you hadn't learned about that, because it was horrifying knowing about it and experiencing it for the first time. So all of these legislative pushes recently are just blatant attacks on our reproductive health. They don't provide any benefit to society, and they really just serve to restrict our bodies and exert control over people that, to be fair, we haven't had full control of our bodies for a while.
Yeah, and it's sexist. It absolutely affects one group of people more than the other, and it's absolutely shaming, and it shouldn't be shaming. It's a natural process. Like, I love this kitty book. Everybody farts, everybody poops, and 50% of the population bleeds.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we're getting close to our cutoff time. So I just want to go back over our Pandia PSA of our favorite emergency contraceptions for the newcomers.
Ella, we prefer Ella. It's prescription only, but under the Affordable Care Act. If you have insurance, no copay, no deductible. If it's cash, I think it's like $40-$45, which is cheaper than pregnancy and cheaper than some of the over-the-counter emergency contraceptions. I'm shocked because there's this one new cool brand, and I thought it was going to be a good price, but I was like, no, it's the same as Ella, which is a brand name prescription drug that works better at every time point and up to a BMI of 35. So again, if you have insurance, get your doctor to write a prescription, call it in, get it ahead of time. At Pandia Health, we write in the thing to the pharmacist, give the patient the one with the farthest expiration date. And if your doctor doesn't do that, that's totally fine. Just when you get it, be like, no, I don't want this one. Please find me one with a farther expiration date. Because usually they'll give you the one with the soonest expiration date because they think you're using it today. And so they're like, yeah, let's get rid of this. But if you can tell them, no, I want the one with the farthest expiration date. I'm preparing in case of emergency. Just, have it like a fire extinguisher ready to go. Don't walk out of the pharmacy with it, because once you walk out, you cannot bring it back. Pharmacies cannot take drugs back, or if they do, that's sketch, because you don't know what somebody did with it when they walked out. They could have like poked holes in it, dumped it in cyanide, did crazy stuff. So that's why we can't take drugs back, because legal and safety.
Yeah, we don't want another Tylenol fiasco. And then final takeaway also, Plan C, otherwise known as medication abortion. We here use Plan C because it's trendy. With Plan B, it makes sense. But Plan C is medication abortion. Plan B is a form of emergency contraception. Those are two drastically different things. Know all of your options. If you want to learn more, we have a million gazillion resources on our website, pandiahealth.com, and you can read about all of your options, Plan A, B, C, and keep yourself prepared, especially if you live in those states that are pushing these more aggressive bans. And finally, if you are living in the states where you're not happy with your politician for pushing such bans, vote. Please vote.
Yes, vote for people that #trust women, trust those of us with uteri with our personal health decisions, and ask, where do you stand on medication abortion? Where do you stand on abortion? Where do you stand on sex ed? Where do you stand on comprehensive sex ed? And if the answer is bad, then hopefully you have another option. If you don't, then run for office.
Yes, everyone can run for office. So, yes, get involved, stay educated, stay up to date, because things are changing. Sorry, just pause for a second. Things are changing day to day out here. So stay in the know and keep yourself safe and healthy.
Yeah, and share Pandia Health with anybody that needs birth control delivered or the best care by the best doctors. We can prescribe in 15 states and we can deliver to all 50. So if you already have a prescription, happy to make sure no one runs out of birth control on our watch to the best of our ability. And if you want to get the best possible birth control prescribed to you, the pill, then we're here for that.
Absolutely. It's best to have Plan A locked down so you don't have to worry about those other things.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Yan. Sorry.
No, not at all. Thank you, Claire. Looking good and great questions, great content.
Yes. And thank you everyone for watching. And we will be back next month with TMI Tuesday. Hopefully it won't be about more bands. Hopefully it will just be some light birth control information. Thanks, guys. Have a great rest of your night.